I know, 1984 was fiction. That's what everybody tells me. But I'm here to point out that the memory hole certainly seems to be real. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Hutch. This is Schola Fides. So the Billy Graham rule's back in the news, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. This story's from the Washington Post. It went live 3 or 4 hours ago. The headline reads, "The Billy Graham rule doesn't honor your wife. It demeans her and all women." So this one ought to be a doozy. Let's take a look and see what Monica Hess has to say. Here's what Monica Hess writes. She says, "It's charitable to first assume our fellow humans are acting in good faith. So let's assume that Robert Foster genuinely believes he is the hero of this story. Let's assume that when the Mississippi gubernatorial candidate denied a female journalist access to his campaign because she's female, he truly saw himself as a bulwark against moral decay. This doesn't make him right, of course, but it does give context to the problem, albeit a context that should terrify us all." Well, there you have it, folks. If all you had to go on was that first paragraph of this article from Ms. Hess, what you would go away with is this, that a male Republican candidate from Mississippi, my God, who would have, what kind of rednecks do we have down there in Mississippi, right? That this terrible human being denied a female journalist access to his campaign. You see, he hates women. He's a misogynist, right? And this is part of a context that should terrify all of us. I mean, the misogynists are taking over. It's right here in the article, isn't it? Well, let's see what she has to say. Larison Campbell, a female reporter with Mississippi Today, revealed this week that she had to shadow Foster for a day on the campaign trail. She had asked to shadow Foster for a day on the campaign trail. 2 of her colleagues were already following other contenders, but Foster turned down Campbell's request, unless, that is, she brought along a male colleague. The reason: he obeys the Billy Graham rule, refusing to be alone with any woman other than his wife, or as he put it, quote, "avoid any decision that may evoke suspicion or compromise of our marriage," end quote. Criticism followed, and Foster bristled at it. "The liberal left can't believe that even in 2019, someone still values their relationship with their wife and upholds their Christian faith," he tweeted. Now, I want to make sure before we go on any further in this article that we have a proper definition of the Billy Graham rule. Now, the Billy Graham rule is one small part of the larger Modesto Manifesto that was part of an agreement that folks that were part of the Billy Graham ministry came to at very early on. And the Billy Graham rule is this. It is a guideline that says that men and women should not meet alone, okay, whether that's in offices or cars or other places, in order to avoid, first, illicit temptation, and second, the appearance of impropriety. And this came out of a very specific context where there were stories that were going around about newspaper reporters, particularly in Los Angeles in the 50s when Billy Graham was doing his crusades there, that had stuffed a half-dressed woman into the closet of Billy Graham's hotel room, and the photographer was waiting outside and had told her that when he opened the door to go into the room, she was supposed to jump out of the closet so he could get this picture. See, fake news isn't a new thing, right? And so this became a serious issue for Billy Graham, and what came out of it was this particular rule, the Billy Graham rule, right? So once again, there are 2 pieces to this rule that I want you to keep in mind as we're looking at this story, right? The first reason that men and women should not meet alone, according to the Billy Graham rule, is because of a need to avoid illicit temptation. But the second one is to avoid the appearance of impropriety, and I think that's particularly important in this context. Well, let's go back and see what Ms. Hess has to allow. Picking up at the rest of the story, says, "But unfortunately, there's not a single inch of moral high ground achieved via the Billy Graham rule, which purports to honor marriage vows. In a similar fashion, Vice President Pence once said he would not dine with a woman to whom he was not married. But rules like these don't honor your wife." And I'm going to highlight this because this deserves to be emphasized, right? They just presume that your marriage vows are so flimsy that you can't be trusted to uphold them unless a babysitter monitors you. Well, Miss Hess, you see, that's where you're wrong. It doesn't assume that your marriage vows are flimsy. It assumes that humanity is what we know humanity is. And that is that humanity is made up of a group of people that jump to conclusions at the earliest possible opportunity. And so the best thing to do is to avoid even the appearance of any possible impropriety. It's not because my marriage vows are flimsy and I obey the Billy Graham rule. It's not because this gentleman from Mississippi has flimsy marriage vows and that's why he obeys the Billy Graham rule. No, it's because we live in a world where even the slightest accusation against someone regarding sexual impropriety is enough to tank their life, maybe forever. Don't believe me? Well, let's take a look at this. Does anybody remember or has anybody heard of Mr. Brian Banks? Well, Brian Banks was an extraordinarily gifted football player when he was in high school. It seemed like, from what I understand, that it was basically a lock that he was going to wind up playing for Pete Carroll, the University of Southern California, and then go on to play in the NFL. But what happened? Well, a high school acquaintance, Juanetta Gibson, shattered his dreams one fateful day after she accused Brian Banks of rape and kidnapping following a consensual sexual encounter on the school campus. It was Banks's word against hers, and she was not likely to change her story. After all, Gibson sued the Long Beach Unified School District, claiming the school's lack security provided an unsafe environment that led to the fraudulent rape. She would eventually receive a settlement of $1.5 million. Let's jump down just a little bit to this paragraph. Nearly a decade after his conviction, Gibson recanted her statements and has acknowledged she fabricated the whole story. Wow, who could have seen that coming, right? You see, we live in a society where those who are on the left want to pretend like false allegations don't exist. And when you bring them up, they say, oh, well, it's only 5% of, rape accusations are false. Well, no, you need to make sure that you nuance that statement correctly, because the actual statement should be only 5% of the rape allegations that we know of are false. That's a different thing entirely. And so what happened? Well, this guy's life was completely and totally ruined. Let's take a look at another one, because this one should be fun. This one is out of Sacred Heart University. Let's see. Football players falsely accused of rape. It was another harrowing case of an alleged rape occurring at an off-campus drinking party of underage college students. In this instance, a teen claimed she was repeatedly raped by two Sacred Heart University football players in a tiny basement bathroom while the party raged on. But months after the players were dismissed from the team and withdrew from the school, 18-year-old Nikki Ovino confessed that she had made up the rape allegations to gain the sympathy of a prospective, I believe it was a prospective boyfriend. Yep, a prospective boyfriend. Let's keep going, because there's more. I can promise you that there's more, right? How about this one? Does anybody remember Rolling Stone magazine's extraordinary article, A Rape on Campus? Well, I do. And do we all remember that this right here, right, this brutal assault and struggle for justice at UVA, this that was written by Sabrina Rubin Erdley, right, all turned out to be a giant hoax. Jackie turned out to be lying through her teeth. Guys' lives were ruined, right? But you know what? That Billy Graham rule, man, that's just so antiquated. Why would anybody do that? I mean, after all, it just shows that your marriage vows are flimsy. Well, and this all started, if you remember, this came up in 2017 when it came to Mike Pence. Right? You see, Mike Pence's use of the Billy Graham rule, it helps keep women from power, according to this article in the New Yorker from March 31st of 2017. And then, the Atlantic had something to say about it as well, right? Mike Pence in the beginning, and the Billy Graham rule. Their method of protecting their marriage may be misguided, but it shows the Pences have an admirable awareness of their own human weaknesses. Well, way to damn the Pences with faint praise there. But at least they did say that, it shows an admirable awareness of human weakness, even though from the headline, clearly the author of this article thinks that that's misguided. All right, let's take a look at another one. This one is from Fortune magazine. Let's see what we've got here. How Mike Pence's dumb dinner rule puts women at a disadvantage. Is anybody starting to notice a pattern here? The pattern is that every single article that we've looked at so far has talked about how the Billy Graham rule hurts and damages women. The religious reasons Mike Pence won't eat alone with women don't add up. This one is from Laura Turner in, who would have guessed it, the Washington Post from March 30th, 2017. So what are we getting at here? Let's go back to the original story. Here's the big issue, folks, that no one seemed to get. It's the reality that the Billy Graham rule is meant to protect men specifically because of the context when the Modesto Manifesto was created, right? But it certainly does apply to women as well. But it protects men from false allegations. And what this comes down to, in my opinion, is nothing more than the continued response to the whole Me Too movement, right? So you guys wanted to create an environment where men could be accused of anything for any reason at any time, and now you want to act shocked when men have responded in a way that's wholly appropriate, right? Okay, if my career, my reputation, my future earnings, my lifestyle, my marriage is on the line because someone can just cook up a story in their fevered brain about something that, never happened, but they can make that accusation, and the accusation can make its way across the internet faster than you can blink, then I'm going to respond. And I'm going to respond by refusing to be alone with any woman who is not my wife. And guys, I'm a little bit of I'll put it like this, I'm wound a little bit tight about this subject, as you can tell from the content of this particular video. Here's what I would tell you guys. If I felt like you guys could do this and get away with it, here's what I'd tell you to do. I'd tell you to stop interacting with women at all. At all. Because every interaction that you have with a woman, you are putting yourself at risk for an accusation of something you didn't do. Right? Let's continue on in this story. So, or as writer Jeremy White offered, the rule presumes either A, you can't be trusted, or B, women can't be trusted. Everyone invoking that rule should be prepared to answer which isn't true. Okay, Mr. White, I'll answer your question, but you won't like my answer. My first part of the answer is this. One, you've presented us with a false choice, which is a common informal logical fallacy. So your question itself is not unlike asking someone if they've stopped beating their wife. That set aside, I will say this. My answer is C. Some women can't be trusted. Unless you're going to claim to me that all women can be trusted all the time, at every moment, throughout every day, all over the entire world. And that the whole thing that we've seen about, Brian Banks and Juanetta Gibson, that we've seen about the UVA rape hoax, that was all true, right? So the answer, Mr. White, is this. Yes, there are some women who can't be trusted. And if that hurts your itty-bitty little feelings, then that's just too daggum bad. So, here's the thing, folks. The Billy Graham rule exists for a reason, and it's because you put two people alone in a certain environment where things are, private, then feelings can get stirred up, attractions can start that are, not appropriate, especially if you're married. Those affections, belong to be directed towards your wife or towards your husband. But more importantly, at least in my estimation, is the reality that it protects you from any possible false allegation. And so, guys, don't let this knock you off your game, all right? Take care of yourselves, protect your reputation, protect your futures, and protect your future and your wife's. Because it's not just your future that's at risk, it's your wife's too. Because any sort of insult or accusation that flies against you is necessarily going to drag her into the picture. And your job is not just to protect your own reputation, it's to protect your wife as well. So guys, We look at this sort of thing. Am I surprised by it? Absolutely no. But what is interesting to me, at least, is the reality of this. It's as though these incidents, the UVA rape hoax, the Duke lacrosse scandal, Brian Banks and Winetta Gibson, and dozens more that I can list. It's like they've just never happened. It's like they've gone straight down the memory hole. And I know, everybody says 1984 was fiction, but you can't prove it by this. Y'all take it easy. Hey guys, thank you so much for sticking around for the end of the video. If you're being helped by this content, please subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified when new videos have gone up. If you've liked this particular video, please give it a like. And if you've got questions, you want to talk about it, leave a comment in the comments thread below. Thank you again. God bless.